Should you buy or should you rent in Denver, Colorado? That's a question we're going to answer right now. What's up, everybody? This is Angel and I'm a real estate agent over here in Denver, Colorado. And what happened is someone sent me this article. It was talking about the housing prices and all of that. So it prompted me to create this video. So the first thing is I want to actually show you what the article is saying, and then we can actually go into the analysis. Let's go. So first of all, who is this person? This person is Robert Shiller. This is one of the economists that created the Case-Shiller Index, and it's a very well-respected economist. And let's hear it from his own words what he's thinking is going to happen in the real estate market.
Yes, the short run in the housing market. Not so easy to forecast. If you're a long-term buyer, it's not clear. But home prices are very, very high, and by historical standards. I would extrapolate the downturn somewhat. It's going to continue. Maybe if you have a chance to delay your purchase, it might be a good time to do it.
What he's saying is that we're at an all-time high in terms of prices. And one thing to take a look at is that he's taking a look at national data, not specifically Denver data. But yes, I would agree. We were very close to the all-time high that we were seeing last year. And he's basically saying that if you wait, you might save a little bit of money. Whether that's true or not, that's what we're uncovering in this video. And now one thing to note is that he's talking about prices specifically. He's not talking about the other variables like interest rates, because you might be able to pay a higher purchase price if you're having a lower interest rate, and it's going to equal the same amount of payments over a long time. But he also said other things that are very intriguing that I also want to share with you.
I wouldn't say inevitably. I would say that it's likely to be some more declines. So, but I hate to, home purchase is such a family decision. I hate to overreact. So we do have a declining market at the moment.
I'm not an economist, but I do follow economics as a hobby. This is something that I really enjoy looking at. And I'm going to say I don't disagree. Prices are projected to come down by the end of the year. And if you're taking your decision exclusively on prices, then yeah, it's probably not a good time to buy. It's going to be really rough. But even he said home purchases are a family decision, which means there's some non-financial considerations that you gotta take into account when making your decision to either buy or rent a home in Denver, Colorado. The first thing, like he mentioned, is time frame. If you're planning on moving to Denver, Colorado, and be here for 2 or 3 years, it's probably not worth it. Most financial planners, they actually say that you should live in your home for at least 5 to 7 years for it to be worth it. But now let's talk about the non-financial considerations. First of all, once you buy your home, you're gonna have stability. Once you have your home, you can set down roots, you can be part of the community, it can help with your lifestyle. Maybe you have a dog and you have a yard where the dog can play outside. They don't have to be stuck in the apartment with you. It's one way to have guests coming over. If you have family that it's gonna come and visit, you have a place to put them in, not just like in the living room. It can help with family planning because you can kind of choose what schools they want to go to, if you want to live close to those schools, what kind of activities they're going to be participating in that are within the reasonable distance to the house. And you can create your own renovation projects, which for a lot of people it's really fun. If you make videos, you can have your very own YouTube studio just like me. If you like painting, you can have your whole garage with all of the paintings. It just gives you that liberty and freedom that we all seek. Now, of course, there's some non-financial considerations for living in an apartment or just renting in general. And the first one is, if you don't know you really want to live in Denver, Colorado, if you kind of just want to try it out before you commit, yes, rent. Because when you're renting, it's relatively easy to move, and you kind of have what I call wings. You kind of have wings. You can go anywhere you want with a little bit of a shorter notice than, going through the process of selling your house so that you can move to another place. You don't have to worry about home maintenance, and you're probably living in downtown Denver or DTC, and you're probably not going to be commuting so you could probably walk to work or go on a quick bike ride. Those are the advantages that you have when you're living in an apartment. And of course, maybe that apartment complex, maybe they have a pool that you don't have to maintain. Maybe they have a gym, a clubhouse for guests. It has a lot of advantages for sure. So my recommendation is you first make the family decision, and then we'll help you with the analytical decision. Now let's take a look at the financial considerations. Dave Ramsey, which is one of the most known financial advisors, he says that you should get a 15-year loan and that your payment has to be less than 25% of your take-home pay. But even Dave Ramsey, which is known for not changing his advice throughout the years, even he's changing his advice. He used to say you have to put 20% down. Now he's saying, hey, you can put 10%. You put as much as you can. Now I'm thinking that he is realizing that maybe his advice is a little bit outdated because, of course, he created his system back in the 90s. The houses were a lot cheaper. You could get 15-year loans and it was comparable to rent prices. Whereas now you get a 15-year loan, your monthly payment's going to be $6,000, $7,000. Of course, that's not affordable for most people. And I think that's why he's backing out of that advice. But there's other financial advisors, for example, the money guys, which I like to call it Dave Ramsey on steroids. And they're actually saying that you should put 3 to 5% down on your first home and have a 30-year loan. So, of course, it gives you twice the amount of time to pay the house off. Plus, it gives you less down payment. So just a little bit of a different financial advice. I recommend you follow both of those channels if you're planning on being financially free. Of course, real estate is a huge part of that. Now we're going to go into an example. We're going to assume that you want to buy the median price home in Denver, Colorado right now, which it is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home, and you're buying this house for $490,000. Now, if you were to rent that same house, you would be paying about $2,300 a month. So we're going to do some math, and we're going to do this analysis over 15 years. Again, the monthly rent is going to be $2,300 a month. You're going to have to pay for renter's insurance. That's going to be about $20 a month. For utilities, it's a small apartment. So let's just say it's going to be $150 a month. And we're going to assume a 3% inflation rate because, of course, your rent and your utilities and everything raises in price every year. So we're going to assume 3% for this example, which, of course, I'm trying to be very conservative because when you're trying to decide if buying a house is right for you, I want you to know where we're coming from. I'm not trying to trick you into buying a home or anything like that. This is going to be very conservative. So the total cost for rent, including your rent, utilities, and renter's insurance, it's going to be about $2,470 a month your first year. Now, after we adjust for inflation and we compound that inflation, over the 15-year period, you're actually going to be paying an average of $3,063 a month for rent, renter's insurance, and utilities. And now I know what you're going to tell me. You're going to say, hey, Angel, if I buy a home, I'm going to have this money that I'm going to use for the down payment that I didn't use, and I could have invested that money. And I'm going to say you're 100% right. That's called the opportunity cost. And we're going to calculate the opportunity cost this way. We're going to take the down payment that you would have put on the house. Let's say it was $17,500. We're going to add $8,000 for closing costs. And then I'm going to subtract 1 month of rent because, of course, if you're renting, you're going to have to leave a deposit. So I'm going to take that off the calculation. That's going to come up to $22,680. Now, this is going to be money that you're going to keep since day one with you that you would invest over the 15-year period. So now I'm assuming that you're not going to use that money to buy a car or a yacht, anything like that. You're actually going to be investing this money because this is the argument everybody gives, which of course it's like the coffee argument. If you don't buy a coffee a day for however many years, you're going to have a Lambo. And then it's like, okay, where's your Lambo? But for purposes of this exercise, we're going to assume that you're not touching that money. You're 100% investing it. over 15 years, that $22,680 is actually going to become $49,263, and we're assuming you're making an 8% return and it's being compounded. So we're applying the whole amount of the principal and the whole amount of the investment income to your rent payment that you're making every month. And so you were paying on average for the 15 years, inflation adjusted, you were paying $3,063. And now you're making $274. So your net payment at the end of 15 years per month, it's going to be $2,789. And that's just for renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Denver, Colorado. Now, again, we're only assuming a 3% increase every year. That could be more or less. Now again, we're assuming a 3% increase every year. Of course, that could be more or that could be less. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. But now let's talk about the cost of owning a home. Like I mentioned, the purchase price is going to be $490,000. Your down payment, we're going to assume 3.5%. That's going to be $17,500, which, by the way, there's a lot of programs where you can actually get into some houses with 0% down. You just pay closing costs. There's other programs where you only pay 1%. There's all kinds of programs. Make sure you reach out. We're going to figure this out. Of course, we have closing costs. Let's assume it's going to be $8,000, which again, it's a little bit on the higher end of being conservative for this calculations. And that means your mortgage, it's going to be $464,850. And of course, we want to be conservative with the interest rates. We're going to assume we can get you a 6.5% interest rate. Now, I want to show you briefly how the loans actually work. Over the 30-year period, you're going to have 360 payments, and your principal balance is going to be the red line. The principal payment's going to be the green line, and the interest is the yellow line. And what that means is as more time progresses, you're paying more into the principal. So for most of the 15 years, you're paying more interest than principal. I just wanted to make that very clear. Now, your mortgage payment, which includes principal and interest, it's gonna be $2,938. This is going to be fixed and it's not going to change over the 30-year period, which this is awesome because we don't have to adjust this number for inflation. It's going to keep the same. Now, it would be intellectually dishonest if I told you that was 100% of the cost. Of course not. We also have insurance, we have property taxes, we have repairs and maintenance. And for that, we're going to assume that we're going to spend $1,000 a month. So your total monthly cost, it's going to be $3,938. Now, the other thing we're going to assume appreciation of 3% per year. I know there's some years that we had over here where we actually had 20% appreciation. Let's just assume maybe one year you're going to have -2% and another year you're going to have 7%. Let's just assume 3% on a linear basis compounded over the 15-year period. Now, what we want to compare is after year 15, who's better off, the renter or the buyer? So we're going to assume that the home buyer is going to sell their home at the end of year 15 with 3% appreciation every year compounded. That $490,000 home actually becomes $741,169. And let's assume we sell it for that price. Of course, there is selling cost. I'm not trying to hide any numbers. And let's just assume it's going to be around 7%. And that's going to include the realtors, the title, all of the transaction fees. So that's going to be $51,881. And like I show you with the payment amortization, most of that 15 years, you weren't paying 50-50 on the interest and principal. So what that means is we owe more than half the loan. We actually owe $343,100. So when you sell your home, you're gonna get a nice check for $346,118 at closing. So at the end of 15 years, all you invested was $17,150 for your down payment, $8,000 for closing costs. You paid $3,998 a month for 15 years. So your total cash out of pocket after 15 years, it's actually going to be $733,900. $3,990. But remember, you received $346,000 at closing, so we're gonna subtract that from the total cash out of pocket. So your total cash out of pocket over the 15-year period, it's gonna be $387,872. Now, of course, that's a lot of money, but that's over 15 years. So after we make the monthly number, it's actually gonna come up to $2,155 a month. And remember, inflation adjusted rent for the month over the 15-year period was $2,789, whereas buying actually comes to $2,093. Over the long term, you're gonna be better off buying. However, I will say you don't even have to sell, because remember, we have $50,000 for selling costs. What if you didn't sell and you kept that property for rental and you just buy your next home and do the same, rinse and repeat? The longer you stretch these periods, it's gonna be the more advantageous it's gonna be to buy. So in my opinion, when you look at it from an analytical perspective, it's really gonna depend how long do you think you're gonna live, because the longer it is, the more advantageous it's going to be to buy right now, regardless of prices. And of course, that's just a financial considerations. Maybe you're in another stage of life and you just want to be around family. It's all good. That's why we talked about the non-financial considerations first. Now we're looking at the analytical part. And going back to the video we talked earlier, he was looking specifically at prices, but he didn't mention anything about rent. He didn't say anything about rent in some markets going up 20% in a year. There's no really any analysis to that. But the thing is that if people follow his advice, which is don't buy the house now because you can find it cheaper later. The thing is that statement, if people were to follow him and what he's saying, people are going to withdraw demand from the housing market. Guess where those people are going? People have to live somewhere. They're going to have to rent. And what happens when demand for rentals increase? Prices are going to increase. And that's one thing that he really didn't touch on. When you take a look at the numbers over the long term, it makes the most sense. And one more thing I want to talk about this, I didn't take into account the tax savings that you get by being a homeowner. What I'm going to tell you, those are complete BS. About 10 years ago, I was actually working for H&R Block when I was getting my accounting degree, and I did hundreds and hundreds of tax returns. I have done more tax returns than any other agent here in Denver, Colorado. I'm just messing, but you get the point. I did hundreds of tax returns, and those tax benefits that people are supposed to get, there's a lot of things that you gotta qualify to get them. And I would say out of 100% of the people that had homes, everybody wanted to make the deduction. It didn't make sense for most of them. And I would say maybe 5 to 10% of the returns actually got the deduction. So when you're making these calculations, don't take into account the tax advantages, because more likely than not, there's none. Well, that was a lot of numbers, but of course I was trying to illustrate with numbers in a very honest and conservative way why it's better to buy a home, only if you're planning on keeping it for the long term. And again, the longer you keep it, the more it's going to make sense, because that's going to be less rent increases. That's going to be more house appreciation. And you also get the loan pay down that you're going to get back if you ever sell your home. So the real cost to home ownership, it's not the payment, it's the interest. And paying down your loan, it's kind of like forced savings that, I know some people, they say they're gonna fund their IRA $5,000 a year. They never do it. But if they have a house payment of $3,000 a month, they're gonna make it every month. It's just a different mindset. And I'm gonna say, if people are struggling making payments, they're more likely gonna skip their IRA funding than their mortgage payment. And you're thinking now, Angel, where am I gonna get the money for the down payment? That's a lot of money, $25,000. There's tons of ways. There's tons of first-time homebuyer programs that even more than first-time homebuyers qualify. First-time homebuyer is a weird definition. I think it means something like you don't live in a home for 2 years, you're renting. So for whatever that means, there's programs for that. There's 1% down, there's 0% down. Now, if you combine these strategies with house hacking, that's when you get a major upgrade into your financial future. Now, what's house hacking? I made a video specifically talking about that, but just talking about it very briefly. Basically, imagine you buy a duplex and you live in one side and rent the other side. That's the easiest example, but house hacking is a spectrum. Maybe you want to have a house with 7 bedrooms and you rent by the room. You can even rent by the bed. Or maybe you want to have a quadplex where you have one unit renting by the room, another unit long-term tenant, another unit short-term tenant. There is all kinds of probabilities with house hacking, and once you get to this point, if you're even interested in that, that's when it makes sense to buy way earlier than with renting in the earlier periods. For example, maybe the break-even point on a house hack, it might be 3 or 4 years, whereas if you're living in it yourself, maybe it is 10 years. So it's really going to depend where on the house hacking spectrum you are and how much money you can collect in rent. And I'm going to tell you, those are real tax benefits for most people. I just want to take a second to say I'm a real estate agent, and if you're thinking of moving here, reach out for a private one-on-one conversation where we're going to talk about what you like and especially what you don't like, so that we can narrow down your search and find the perfect home for you. All of the information's in the description below. Now back to the video. Buying a house might not be for you. Everybody wants different things. Maybe you want wings. Maybe you want to check out Denver before you fully commit. In any case, our job with this channel is giving you an honest opinion of what's like living in Denver, Colorado and the surrounding areas, and actually showing you what these areas look like instead of just reading about it. So right now, hit the subscribe button. We do videos every week. They're the most in-depth videos about moving to Denver, Colorado and the surrounding areas. And drop a comment down below what areas you want to see next. Until next time, see you later.